I just want to bring along to our next speaker. So we have Maria Phillips, which I saw you part of the crowd listening. So
yes,
please,
hi, how are you?
Welcome. How are you? Welcome. So she's gonna be here presenting the harnessing technology to automate risk and compliance. So Maria is a technology expert in compliance and as well as experience institution and with startups. And really, Maria, feel free to introduce yourself and educate ourselves and have a good discussion.
Awesome, and thank you very much for that intro, Vanessa. So yes, my background is very much in risk and compliance and accounting, which of course is, the jobs the little children dream of when they grow up, is to be an accountant or a risk officer or compliance officer. Perhaps not, but it's where I'm truly passionate about. And I've worked for a very long time in large banks across the globe, doing lots of different roles and trying to be regulatory compliant, okay? About a year ago, because banking was really bubbling up with crypto and DeFi, and I had to start learning about what was going on in this whole area. I decided to start doing some research and check out what was going on and understand, because I assumed, right, financial services has really struggled to be compliant and to really manage risk, okay? And that's why, challenger banks and digitally native banks are really creeping in and taking that customer base from them, because they're moving so slowly, and it's directly related to risk and compliance and how they're trying to manage it. A large bank at the moment is estimated to have 50% of their operational expenditure on risk and compliance. Now think about that in the context of any other business. This is trying to meet an external regulator's requirements, just trying, by the way, because not many of them can say that they're fully meeting those. So this is the space that I love. This is the space that I really have tried for nearly 20 years to solve and create useful solutions in banks. But this is the area that has not changed that much in my 20-year career. So now looking at digitally natives, and I will share some slides in a second, the opportunity, and obviously listening to Nicholas earlier when he was talking about his inability in KYC and it being a barrier to entry. This is all directly related to risk and compliance. Okay, so this is the same story I'm hearing. It's just different people are telling it. Okay, so what I dream about and what we're attempting to create, we've created an MVP, is around taking all the technology components, placing them together, so that if you have a particular type of crypto asset firm or decentralized finance platform, whatever you're doing, we can hook directly into it. So we can fully automate the needs. So when the regulator comes to you and says, you can't let a 16-year-old on your platform, you can show how you can de-risk it and make it available to them. Now that's, future focused. It's not right now. We can't do it right now. But if we got those pieces, if we got the pieces of the puzzle in place, we've proven through an MVP that it is in fact possible. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how I want to help all the people that are working in this space achieve a proper business model that doesn't have 50% operational expense directly related to headcount. So sitting in your financial crime unit, your analytics unit, I don't want you to have to do that. I want you to be the next generation where you actually have this headcount in control. So let me share some slides and walk you through what we're doing. Can you see that?
Yes, very well.
Okay. So effectively what we're doing is being able to prototype, build and scale any compliance and risk framework. So if you have a BAS or if you have something that's transacting in some capacity, either an exchange or a wallet, whatever it is, whatever you're charging your customer through or interacting with your customer through, we want to hook directly into it. And as you scale and as you add new products, we grow and help you scale too. So automating risk and compliance, this is headcount is the biggest barrier. And when I talk to people, when I talk to them about risk and compliance, their eyes glaze over. But then when I talk to CTOs and CEOs about how they're going to scale, and you're doing your B round, and you're doing your C round, that's amazing. But what's your headcount look in that business model, and like how are you actually going to meet that? Wouldn't you like to actually reduce that headcount? And then they start paying attention, right? Because operating in this space is expensive and it's also very, very high risk. So how do we actually go and look at this whole space? Well, we're saying we'll reduce your headcount by 50%. We're going to streamline your processes and we're going to give it to you in one tidy contract. So if you think of some of the largest banks in the world, say HSBC, the amount of vendors that work in this space, it's not 20 or 30, it's hundreds. They literally have hundreds of platforms. So that's not a good space to be in. What you need is a controlled environment where you can take all these platforms and put them together. And when they stop working or when they're not good enough anymore, rip them out and be able to put a new, better product in. That's what we're about. You scale safely, you meet your requirements, and we literally just tidy that up in one contract for you. So let's talk about the environment, right? If you're looking, even in the FCA here in the UK, if you're looking to be regulated, you could have an e-money license, or you might go on and get a proper banking license. But as you grow bigger and have more regulatory requirements, you need more people and more technology to do that. So in my last role as a compliance officer, I would go every quarter and I would present and tell them how the company was doing in terms of risk and compliance. And my reporting pack, when I printed it off, would be that high, right? And if you think about what I was reporting on, say if I took Q1 from this year, which is January, February, and March, if something happened on the first day of January, that board wasn't hearing about it till about 165 days later. So that is phenomenal. When you think that, if I wanted to go in to any sort of platform and say, well, how many transactions happened today? Within reason, I could probably pull a report that would tell me that. But this is how antiquated it is in the area of risk and compliance. This is how disjointed, disparate, all the bad words, nothing is housed together and nothing interacts with each other. So that's caused this huge paper-based reporting. And recently, I've been speaking to the chief compliance officers, chief risk officers, the MLROs in this space of the newer platforms. And I'm like, tell me about what you're doing. And they're like, well, we each have approximately 6 Excel spreadsheets each, and we're trying to manage our financial crime through that. We're trying to manage all our compliance through that. And I was like, how is this happening again? And it's happening because they're buying units of technology that go in and solve a problem. There's nothing wrong with them solving the problem, but they're not joined up. Nothing is coming together and actually giving a full picture. That snapshot of the transactions you can get, it's not possible within risk and compliance. Or worse still, they think they only have to be compliant with onboarding, which is what that experience Nicholas was talking about in terms of logging on and gaining access to a platform. Okay, which that's a lot more than that. So what we want to do is move from this static reporting piece that is, 165 days later to a data-rich environment. And what we've done is model out what the data looks like in terms of the transactions and match them back to the various components of risk and compliance. So this is, the easiest work in the world to do, but it takes a very long time. You're literally matching products to transactions and being able to just see the data in a different way. But what the aim is to do is to make this a real-time reporting piece. And the components are quite simply, understanding what your foundation is, what are your products and what are your services? And where are you providing those services? So for example, if I was an exchange and I was located in the UK, but I also wanted to transact or have customers in France and Germany and Spain, I need to understand what jurisdiction I'm in or what country I'm trading in, and what products I'm allowing those people in those countries to use, because that's key, right? And after that, if we can match it back to the data, we can pretty much tie those 9 components together. Everyone on the team has worked in banking before or worked in fintechs before. We're very, very aware in terms of how hard individually we've tried to solve in this space in financial services. And I suppose with an experienced team, it's much easier to bring these pieces together. It's very hard as a sole founder, which I started this being a sole founder, trying to figure out how I could possibly do this and the easiest way to do this. So what we do is we begin by data mapping our customer. We're in the middle of process mapping our customer. And then we do what you call assurance mapping. So assurance is how you check what you've done and how you have an oversight on it. So this has been really interesting to see how the platforms work. Some of them are using out-of-the-box solutions, but that just makes it easier for me to go in and data map them, right? So if I have somebody who's using a Rails bank application, I now know how that works, and I can hook into somebody else who's using a Rails bank solution. And I'm attempting to create an out-of-the-box version of risk and compliance for them. And what we want to do, the most important part is we want to reduce the headcount by approximately half. So take that 50% in financial services and make it 25% at least, if not lower, in a digitally native piece. That's what we're trying to do. And we feel that, in terms of appetite, our customers really do engage with the thought of that headcount piece, right? That's what they're looking at. That's what they're saying. There's my pain point. Solve that and we can talk. So it's, exciting times. We've got a lot going on. We also do defense consulting in terms of, obviously if you have a regulator coming in to audit you, or, you're trying to get a license through them, it's really about how do you create a defense strategy. So you're answering those questions and making sure that, you're airtight in terms of that application. We do transformation. So if we have an existing entity that's in a lot of trouble and they need remediation, we do engage with them, and also resourcing. So it's about, can I find somebody to sit in as chief compliance officer for them and really handle that business area for them. So that's us in a nutshell. Again, risk and compliance isn't always, I suppose, the most interesting part in terms of crypto asset or DeFi, but it's an area I'm very, very passionate about.
Excellent. No, I can definitely see, and there is an interface in between the financial and the startups. Definitely see. So yeah, I don't necessarily see any questions coming, so feel free, audience, to guys to just post it there. I can actually have one. I was wondering when you were talking, Maria, which are the customers basically that you kind of interact nowadays with, or perhaps do you actually have a specific audience that you are addressing?
Sure.
That's part of the curiosity. Yeah.
As we're based in the UK, so mainly we've been looking at UK-based exchanges, wallets, banks. So I've done an awful lot of work in the past with neobanks. So looking at them saying, okay, well, maybe we can't take everything and automate it for you, but give me a section of it and let me go there and prove that I can automate it for you. So I'm very interested in working with crypto asset platforms, decentralized finance platforms, and showing them how it is possible to make this easy and I won't say cheap, but cost effective.
Yeah, very good. And the other question I was having so you basically try to make a solution that makes sense for the customer itself, depending on the size. I was wondering, do you think that your offering will help institutions to actually adopt the blockchain technology faster?
Yeah, definitely. So to be honest with you, and this is an awful lot of the conversation I have when I work in finance, I still do work in financial services. It's, there's an excitement in terms of what the revenue they can achieve with these new products. But then when I talk to risk and compliance people in traditional financial services, there's a real, I suppose, it's not fear, it's hesitancy, because they don't have their existing products under control, right? So it's, I see why they want to get involved, but I also see that they don't have an environment that is ready for these additional products. It's already struggling with its additional product set. Because what is a bank, right? It is a business that sells products and it has services, right? And it's not been able to get those in line with the regulators' expectations across the world, because it's the bigger ones that are trying to do it and the bigger entities that are trying to really adopt these. But it's, signs are on that it's just going to cause them more trouble, to be honest with you, because they failed to automate this entire area, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I just wanted to link it to, because there is the coming sustainability financial system and the new regulations and taxonomy. So can you perhaps tell a bit about how do you see this new regulatory area in a way that perhaps we can use to be more automated?
In relation to sustainability, is that what you said?
Yes, yeah. Investment and sustainability, because that's basically a new area that has been, at least, there's trained a lot of efforts to regulate what that means actually, sustainability, what is not. Yeah.
So actually, it's funny, there's been a recent review done in the UK in terms of ESG and the requirements for funds. And, there weren't many people that actually came out well of that review. So that just tells you that, in terms of financial services, they haven't figured it out. So again, this adoption piece is quite important. And there's a real movement, and I've been looking for platforms that actually can do this, because that's something I need to provide to my customers eventually, is to be able to show this ESG piece, because that's a regulatory requirement. So how do you do that, and how do you go through? Well, to be honest with you, in terms of ESG, where you start is with the product. And I can tell you now that in traditional financial services, if I went to them and I said, where do you trade this fund? Tell me every country you trade this one fund in. And I can practically guarantee you, very few of them would be able to tell you. That's how little control they have over the entire banking product book, which is unfortunate. But then it leads to the fact that when you have to go and audit in terms of ESG, you can't find the information in the first place.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one, because if you have to provide information in the future, you have to build it.
Yeah.
No, very good.
And then, you take it from the other point of view, right? Where the business, right, will decide that they want to trade in a new fund, and this can happen in any company. And they go to risk and compliance, and they say, can I do that? And it takes so long for risk and compliance to move. They're seen as being blockers of business, when in fact, they're just trying to follow paper-based, tick sheets. It's like, it really, it's just hampering them from moving fast. But again, in terms of what this is, it's a cost center, right? Risk and compliance is a cost center at the end of the day. So when you talk to them about change and how they'll do this, then you have, the big four accountancy firms are all frothing at the mouth. They're like, I could digitally transform you and it'll be amazing. And I mean, have they not learned of a decade of digital transformation, that they're still not transformed? So therefore, what have they been paying for? It's a phenomenal cost that happens in the business.
You have a very good point, actually. I don't know how many consultants are on the call, but it is actually a very good challenge for them. No, I wanted to touch upon what you said. We have an MVP. We have proven that can be done. Can you perhaps share a bit more about what is so important about that, and how do you actually make it tangible to your clients to understand?
Sure. So I work with some very, very expensive risk and compliance platforms, but I've also created a network of people who have created solutions that are not as costly. So there'll be smaller prices. So one of the use cases I'm working on at the moment is in relation to safeguarding. Okay, so if you were to register in the UK in terms of safeguarding, you have to have X amount of money to cover the amount you have in your wallet or your exchanges, right? Whatever's being housed there. So just to break it down. One of the suppliers that work in this space, I went to them and I said, what's the minimum contract you'll do? And they're like, minimum we'll do is 100K a year. And I was like, small enterprises, small digitally native enterprises cannot afford that. So I went to another supplier that were slightly smaller and I said, how much can you do? Like, what's the minimum contract you do? And they're like 60K. I was like, oh God, okay, that's still too high. I went to somebody else, they said 40K is the minimum, but we're probably going to be, charging 60K from next year. So I looked outside financial services and I found a data reconciliation tool, and the license is £1,000 a year for one user, which is all they need, right? And there's a level of onboarding to get that data hooked in and modeled out correctly so that you could use it. So there might be maybe a £10,000 professional service fee to do that, but that's a big difference. And it's a big difference to a platform that needs to scale and that needs to save their money for actually, marketing and finding new customers. 11,000 for the first year and then 1,000 thereafter versus 40, 60 and 100K. Big difference there, And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, right? So when I do the MVP and when I've modeled it all together, it's not these massive priced pieces. And what we do is we say to the platform, as you transact, as if you do, more and more transactions and you hit, the magic number of 500,000 transactions a day, or, 500,000 transactions a month or whatever, we set the contract up so that it grows and the vendors get more money, but you have a managed. All right.
No, very good. Can you then, just a question about the company size and the team. So can you tell a bit more about that? And perhaps just the last one before I forget, because I think that's the most interesting. What has been the most challenging about that? Because exciting, I can see the passion you have for the topic. So that's basically. So what has been the most challenging, and what could be that thing that will be helpful to you that would happen? What would you like to desire?
Sure. So the team, we've a very experienced team. So I work on this full time as well as my other consulting pieces. And in my consultancy, I have 4 other people that work with me. But in relation to this specific project, there's me and 2 other co-founders who are in stealth mode, we'll call it. One of them works for a financial institution and the other one works for a consultancy in our sector as well. And they'd be very senior, former C-suite. One is still a C-suite and the other one is a former C-suite person. So I think the best thing for me was obviously being able to formulate a team. Because, when you have a great idea and you want to do so much, you can't go very far unless you have somebody with you, or at least the right people with you. So that's been fantastic. And then your second question, I can't remember your second question was.
More about, no, don't worry, because more about, what's been the most challenging and still is the most difficult for you to actually grow, and you would like to move faster? Or what help would you need?
Sure. So we have a customer, right, an initial validation. So in my world, because it's such a high risk area, you have these gates when you move, right? So number one, your customer is your validation customer. And then you get 2, 3, 4, and 5. And by the time you reach your 5th customer, right, you know your product and you're ready to scale. That tends to be how we move. So we're at stage 1. Second stage is really to say, okay, well, we've done this. We've, not done it perfectly. We've gotten things wrong, things right. But we've gotten our way through it, and this has worked. And then it's about finding those customer number 2, 3, 4, and 5 who have appetite to obviously save money and do this and try to be regulatory compliant. Because what you're having now, there's a conversation going on at the moment in terms of, well, I don't want to be regulated because I shouldn't be regulated. And okay, I get it. I do get it. But at the end of the day, if you want to trade in the UK, Europe, wherever, ultimately, I don't know how you're eventually going to get around not being regulated. It'll be seen as a have-to-have kind of effort. And that's why I'm quite worried where the sector is going. Because the regulators, I get why they're doing it, but I don't necessarily agree with their approach all the time in terms of speaking to these digitally native platforms. I think they need to be part of the conversation, not trying to control the conversation, because right now they don't have control of the environment. It's not like banks. Banks all have to subscribe to the regulators, right? They think they can still impose that onto all the crypto asset firms. The reality is, they're not paying attention to them, and they're not paying attention to them because the way they're speaking and communicating to them is incorrect as far as I can see. So I don't know. I do hope at some point they'll get to a way to actually communicate and work together properly. I think it's really needed.
Yeah, you have a good point. We had discussion before. Perhaps you were not just previously with someone from Phillips from Switzerland, and they explained how they actually created the regulatory system.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting because it was basically a conversation and a sandbox with the people to make sure that they actually have that space. Yeah. And then the banks themselves, then they saw the opportunity and then they built on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very interesting entry because I think that's what it's about, the dialogue and understanding each other in rather than perhaps applying what happened in the past. Yeah.
Exactly. I thoroughly agree.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everything, Maria. It's been very enlightening. I will definitely look more information about it.